My wife took half my business and mocked me, saying I'd be broke within a year. Fast forward 5 months and her lawyer was calling nonstop in a full-blown panic. Because I'd made sure she was left with nothing but a hollow shell of what we once built. Hey, Reddit. Never thought I'd be the kind of guy airing his personal train wreck online. But here I am, banging this out at 1 in the morning. Because sleep's been dodging me like a client ducking out on their invoice. So yeah, I'm 38 male. And I built a landscape architecture and garden design business. Literally from dirt and pure stubbornness. 13 years back, I was just some scrappy guy with a beat-up wheelbarrow. A handful of second-hand tools I picked up from yard sales. And more grit than made sense. I got started in my parents' backyard. With some help from my uncle, let's call him Lucas. A big-name garden designer who'd done some seriously high-end projects. He threw me a bone after I graduated with a degree in horticulture and landscape design. Right in the middle of the housing crash. Not exactly a booming time for fancy garden installs. But he saw something in me that I hadn't figured out myself yet. Gardens don't mind waiting, he used to say, while walking me through how not to butcher a Japanese maple. They've got all the time in the world until the economy gets back on its feet. This guy could take a dead patch of soil and turn it into something out of a glossy magazine. I was nowhere near that level when I started. But I made up for the lack of talent by hustling and sweating it out. My first office was basically a corner of my parents' garage. With a battered old drafting table Lucas had given me for sketching designs. My earliest clients? Mostly neighbors who felt sorry for me. Followed by their friends who actually liked the work I did. I charged just enough to scrape by and keep myself stocked with ramen. For 4 straight years, I dumped every dollar back into the business. Better tools, landscaping books, and eventually a used truck. With my logo clumsily hand-painted on the side. And yeah, it looked terrible. By the 5th year, I had just enough income to rent a tiny spot above a garden supply shop. And bring on 1 part-time helper. It was enough to finally move out of my parents' place and into a modest apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. My work was starting to get noticed around town. And I had this small, loyal crew of clients who really vibed with my style. I focused on natural, sustainable garden spaces. Ones that felt like they belonged there from the start. Not something artificial slapped onto the land. That's when I met Olivia. I'd scraped together enough cash to rent the smallest, most forgotten booth. Tucked away in the back corner of a local home and garden show. Printed out my portfolio at the neighborhood copy shop. Pinned the photos onto foam boards. And just hoped someone would stop and take a look. Compared to the sleek setups of the big-name companies around me. Mine looked like a high school project. Haley showed up during one of those quiet stretches. And she actually took her time checking out my designs, which was rare that day. She stood out the second I saw her. Tall, sharp bob haircut. She had that I've got my life together kind of vibe. While most of the foot traffic was couples dreaming about manicured lawns and patios, she rolled in solo dressed in this subtle but clearly expensive outfit. Carrying a leather portfolio that screamed professional. Your designs have something the others don't, she said, pointing at my woodland meditation garden sketch. They've got soul. That was our icebreaker. She told me she was 36 with a background in architectural visualization. The kind of next-level 3D renderings that make clients sign checks before you've even touched a shovel. She had been working at a high-end architecture firm, but was feeling boxed in by the corporate nonsense. Constantly designing cookie-cutter beige buildings for beige clients, as she put it. We went from a quick chat at the booth to grabbing coffee after the show wrapped. And that turned into dinner, eh? So long the restaurant staff started wiping down tables around us. She was smart, driven, and had this crazy cool idea of blending traditional landscape design with the latest visualization tech. By the end of the night, we were sketching rough ideas on napkins. Me mapping out garden layouts? Her brainstorming ways to bring them to life with 3D renders so clients could truly picture it. You know what your business really needs, she said. Eyes lit up with excitement. Someone who can help your clients see your vision. Your designs should be seen exactly how you picture them in your mind. Just 3 weeks later, we were already teaming up on a client proposal. Someone I never would have had the nerve to approach on my own. 5 months down the line, we were a couple. A year after that, she brought all her visualization gear into my little studio space. And just like that, we made it official. We became business partners. When we tied the knot 7 years ago, I really believed we'd grow side by side, perfectly in sync. Her digital know-how and my green thumb felt like a match made in heaven. It was beauty, both digital and rooted in nature. Honestly, those first 5 years were pretty amazing. Haley helped take my business from guy who's good with plants to a full-on boutique landscape design firm. She made these gorgeous virtual tours of my garden ideas that clients could explore before we even broke ground. She'd take my pencil sketches and turn them into these fully immersive walkthroughs. Our website, which replaced my sad little Vistaprint template, even snagged a local design award. She launched polished social media pages for us, highlighting each project from initial sketches to the final touches. By year 2 of being married, our company, Green Vision, had built a name around here for creating outdoor spaces that mixed timeless garden style with a modern twist. With her support, I started taking creative leaps I never would have dared to try alone, like designing a Japanese-inspired dry garden with custom stonework, or a rooftop ecosystem for a trendy downtown restaurant, even a therapeutic garden for a children's hospital. With sensory features for kids with different needs, my designs grew bolder, more ambitious, and thanks to her 3D visuals helping clients grasp the concepts, our proposal acceptance rate jumped from around 35% to nearly 75%. Business picked up enough that we finally opened a real studio downtown. It wasn't anything flashy, but it was a proper storefront with our name on the door, not just a room above a shop anymore. We brought on 2 amazing young designers. One was Lucas, named after my uncle, which felt like a lucky sign. And then there was Maya. Both of them were fresh out of school with killer portfolios, but they hadn't been able to land jobs at the big-time firms yet. I saw something in them, the same spark my uncle once noticed in me. Raw talent that just needed the right guidance. For a while, it all felt like a dream. I handled the hands-on landscaping and design side of things. She took charge of the digital presentations and client-facing stuff. That setup let me pour myself into the part one loved most, bringing outdoor spaces to life. While she took care of the business stuff, that always made my skin crawl: marketing, client leads, contracts. I completely trusted her with the tech side, which was way over my head anyway. We bought this modest house with a big backyard, and I turned the yard into a living, breathing portfolio of eco-friendly garden work. We weren't rich, not by a long shot, but we had enough breathing room to take the occasional trip, invest in decent tools, and not freak out if a client delayed a payment. I remember sitting at dinner on our 5th anniversary, at this cozy bistro with a garden patio I'd helped design, thinking, yeah, this is it. This is what it feels like to make it. What I didn't realize was that I was standing at the top of the hill, admiring the view right before the steep drop. Things shifted so slowly I barely noticed at first, kind of like how leaves fade to yellow before anyone admits fall has arrived. It started with little remarks about our studio space. What used to be called charming and authentic suddenly became cramped and outdated. Haley started comparing what we earned to the salaries of her old colleagues, who'd stayed in the corporate design world. You know, the downtown offices in glass buildings, cushy bonuses, and all that. Brooke just got promoted to visualization director. She mentioned offhand one night, scrolling through her phone while I was elbows deep in a project at the dining room table. They're flying her to Tokyo to roll out their new VR platform. Cool, huh? Must be nice. Those kinds of comments started slipping in more and more. All of a sudden, our steady income felt like barely scraping by. Like we were one big Amazon order away from going broke. The local business I'd poured everything into? Now I guess it was just a big fish in a tiny pond. Because apparently if it's not international, it doesn't count. And those designs she used to rave about, the ones she once called soulful and truly unique, now they were just nice but not scalable. In other words, she chuckled and said, "Cute hobby, babe, around 750. A minute later, the real punches started coming in. She pointed out right around 8 o'clock how her talent for visual design could easily land her a 6-figure salary. You know, if she wasn't stuck crafting habitats for garden gnomes. Oh yeah, just so charming. Meanwhile, there I was, busting my tail, grinding through custom projects that pushed both my creativity and my body to the limit, all to boost our bottom line. But no matter how much I hustled, it was never enough to please her. The same woman who once admired how passionate I was now laughed it off as playing with plants, like I was some kid messing around in a sandbox. And let me tell you, when the person who promised to stand by you starts treating your dream like it's nothing, that kind of hurt digs in real deep. One night, after she threw out another backhanded jab about how our business was cute but going nowhere, I decided to finally bring it up. "I thought you loved what we built together," I told her, honestly trying to understand what the hell had changed. "You used to say how good it felt," I reminded her, creating spaces that actually made people happy. She let out this tired sigh, the same heavy one she seemed to save just for me lately, and said, "I did love it, Evan, but I'm 40 now. Is this really it for you?" she asked. A tiny little studio making gardens for bored housewives and small-town diners? Don't you want something bigger? She pushed. Aren't you tired of playing in the sandbox? And man, that one hit a lot harder than I showed. Because it wasn't just a critique. It felt like she was trying to wipe away everything I stood for. It wasn't just a business to her anymore. It was a symbol of everything she wanted to leave behind. But to me, I wasn't just landscaping for fun. This was my legacy built with my hands and my heart. Every patch of green, every stone walkway, every late night I spent hunched over sketches with dirt still stuck under my nails. That was me. And now it wasn't just that she wanted out. It felt like she wanted to erase everything that made me who I was. I pushed back, trying to defend it. Our clients love what we do, I said. We're making a good living doing something real, something that matters. We're making an okay living, she shot back. And sure, Mrs. Whitmore adores her butterfly garden, she added. But where's the real impact? Where's the growth? Where's our exit strategy? Exit strategy? I repeated, completely thrown off. This isn't some startup we're flipping for profit, I said. This is our life's work. But she just looked at me with this mix of pity and annoyance like I was missing the whole point. Exactly, she said. I should have seen it right then and there. The massive gap between us. I was building something that could sustain a lifetime of creativity and meaning. She, on the other hand, had always seen it as a launch pad to something else. Me? I was literally physically growing a garden. Whenever I asked her for real details to start working into the designs, she just waved me off, saying something like, "We're still trying to nail down the big picture." I tried to push aside that growing sense of unease creeping into our relationship, telling myself to stay focused on making this project the best it could be. Then one night, while I was walking past her home office, I caught her on a phone call. The door was cracked open just enough. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I happened to hear her mid-conversation. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said, completely oblivious that I was standing right there. "It's definitely tempting, just complicated because of my current situation." And then I heard this laugh, light, playful, flirty, the kind I hadn't heard from her in what felt like forever. She kept going, "Yeah, I get the timing. Opportunities like this don't exactly stick around." And then the real gut punch. "No, he has no idea. I just need a little more time to get everything sorted out." Right then, it was like a switch flipped in my head. Later that same night, while I was digging through the home office looking for some old tax paperwork, I stumbled onto something she clearly hadn't meant for me to find, a separate bank account. Now, it wasn't technically illegal, we live in a community property state, but it sure felt shady, especially seeing nearly $26,000 tucked away in there. When I confronted her about it, she didn't even flinch. No panic. No guilt. She just stared at me like I was some clueless intern and casually called it her contingency fund. I asked her, "Contingency for what exactly?" And she fired back without missing a beat, "For when your cute little garden business crashes and burns." "Let's be real," she added, "those mom and pop operations don't survive anymore." Straight face. Zero hesitation. I just stood there stunned. My business? I thought it was our business. She sighed like I was wasting her precious time and closed her laptop with a snap. "Evan, come on. Be realistic," she said, as if she was explaining something painfully obvious. "I know that business is your passion project, and yeah, I helped you make it viable, but it's not a long-term growth opportunity. It's not scalable beyond a certain point." I just stood there for a second, trying to find the right words. Finally, I asked, "So, what was all that talk with Derek about? What offer were you two discussing?" And for a brief moment, something flickered across her face, something she couldn't hide fast enough. Was it guilt? Irritation? Fear? Hard to say, but it was there. "He's impressed with my work," she said. "He thinks I could do a lot more than just gardens." I looked her dead in the eye. "You're not just leaving the business," I said. She stayed silent. So I kept going. "You're sleeping with him." And that time, her silence was all the confirmation I needed. No shock. No denial. Just that same cold, blank stare, like I was inconveniencing her by dragging reality into the conversation. I stood there for a long moment, letting it all sink in. It wasn't even the betrayal that hit the hardest. It was how smug she seemed about it, like she had already moved on and left me stuck, waiting for an ending she'd already written without even bothering to clue me in. I let out a long breath. And then, in the calmest voice I could manage, I said, "This marriage? It's over. And the business?" I added, "I'll rebuild it without the dead weight." I didn't yell. I didn't ask her why. I didn't throw a fit. I just walked out. Because when someone shows you exactly who they are, you don't argue. You just stop standing in their shadow. That night, I crashed in my workshop, surrounded by all my design sketches and trays of plant samples. For days later, she served me with divorce papers. No talk of fixing things. No mention of counseling. Just done. She said she'd outgrown small-scale thinking and needed to chase bigger opportunities that matched her ambition. And there I was, left feeling completely uprooted and hollowed out. It wasn't until later, after picking up bits and pieces through industry gossip, that the full picture finally clicked into place. Turns out, the client wasn't just interested in our landscaping ideas. He was putting together an entire new division focused on environmental design and visualization. A much bigger stage. A way bigger spotlight. And guess who landed a top spot in it? Yeah. Suddenly, everything made a whole lot more sense. But the real kicker? Since she'd been working on the visualization concepts for years, her lawyer argued she was entitled to half. Not just half our personal stuff. Half of everything we had built. Half my business. The very thing I had planted, nurtured, and grown long before she ever showed up in my life. The settlement talks were nothing short of brutal. Her lawyer came in swinging, showing off all these flashy portfolios, trying to spin the story where she was the mastermind who magically transformed my little landscaping gig into a real business. Like I hadn't been grinding away at this for years before she even knew the difference between a trowel and a shovel. Apparently, all the blood, sweat, and years I'd poured into it mattered about as much as last season's dead weeds. Ms. Morgan's technological innovations and marketing expertise increased Green Vision's revenue by 330% over a 7-year span, her lawyer bragged during one particularly brutal hearing. The company today is fundamentally different from Mr. Cooper's original landscaping service, largely due to my client's contributions. I pushed back the only way I could. The designs are still mine, I said. The client relationships are mine. The knowledge of plants, of landscaping, that's all mine. And yet, with a smirk that could have belonged to a plastic plant, her lawyer shot back. Without her visualization work, your designs would still just be doodles on graph paper. The business model? The client acquisition strategies? The tech side? All her doing. My lawyer did his best to fight for me. But he was a general practice guy, mostly used to handling wills and real estate deals. He wasn't ready for the corporate shark they had thrown at us. And honestly, I couldn't afford a big-shot divorce attorney on a small business owner's paycheck. The judge? He ate it all up like it was gospel. And when I finally got the settlement terms handed to me, I swear I could feel my soul just float right out of the room. She walked away with the house, half my savings, and the cherry on top, 50% of my business. Yeah, the same business I built from scratch while she was still Googling what a wheelbarrow was used for. I was gutted. But somehow I held it together. And then came the final kick in the gut. When we sat down to sign the papers, she gave me this smug little smirk and said, "You'll be bankrupt in a year without my tech skills. No one wants your cute little hand-drawn garden doodles anymore." Even her lawyer laughed, like they'd already marked the calendar for my bankruptcy hearing. I just smiled, nodded, and let them have their moment, letting them think I was finished. Like some sad, washed-up plant rotting in the corner. Was I crushed? Absolutely. For about 3 days, I seriously thought about ghosting the whole industry, packing it all up, moving to the middle of nowhere, stocking shelves at a garden center, and forgetting this dream ever even existed. But then I remembered something my uncle once told me after a brutal drought wiped out half our nursery. Gardeners and gardens don't die easy. We're built to come back stronger. Game on. While she was busy popping champagne over her shiny new lease and her $2,000 espresso machine, I was out hauling pavers through pouring rain, trying to meet a project deadline. No fancy interns. No tech crew. Just me, a wheelbarrow, and a muddy slope that tried to eat my boots every step of the way. That was my healing process, therapy, but with blisters. I didn't have time to wallow. I had retaining walls to build and clients counting on me. What Haley forgot was that while she knew how to visualize spaces, I knew how to create them. And I didn't just know my clients from online profiles or fancy presentations. I knew them as real people. People who were building outdoor spaces for weddings, milestone birthdays, family reunions, peaceful retreats. People who wanted a real connection to nature, not just a pretty rendering on a screen. The day after we signed those papers, I went straight to the bank and pulled my half of the money out of our business account. I made sure to double-check with my lawyer first, didn't want any surprises later, and only took exactly what was legally mine as a 50% owner. No games. No sneaky moves. Then I reached out to Lucas and Maya, two designers I'd mentored for years. We met up at a little coffee shop way off our usual grid, didn't want word getting around too soon. I laid it all out for them, no sugarcoating. I'm starting fresh, I told them. New company. New location. Same design philosophy. I was honest. I can't pay you what you're used to right away. Things are gonna be tight for a bit, but you'll have more creative freedom. And when we get stable, you'll have a stake in the profits. I braced myself for polite rejections, for the thanks but no thanks. Instead, Maya just leaned forward and asked, when do we start? And Lucas? He just nodded without hesitation. Lucas, always the one thinking about the fine print, asked, what about the non-compete clauses in our contracts? I told him those are with Green Visions, which, by the way, is now half-owned by someone who doesn't even care enough to run it. Plus, those clauses only stopped us from starting a direct competitor, not from joining another business. After that, I picked up the phone and called our landlord about the studio lease. I laid it all out for him, told him about the divorce and the whole mess. To my surprise, he actually got it. Turns out his sister had gone through a rough divorce too. He agreed to let me out of the lease early on one condition: I had to help redesign his home garden for free. That night, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. She wouldn't stop blowing it up, texts flying in nonstop. Where's the business account? What happened to the design files? What about the clients? I didn't answer a single one. I just sat there, watching the messages pile up like leaves in a backyard during fall. Let her sweat. The next morning, I filed paperwork to open a brand new LLC, Lucas Legacy Gardens. I named it after my uncle, the man who taught me everything I know about this work. I packed up and moved across town into a small converted carriage house. Rent's cheaper, the space is cozier, and it's got real charm, not the cookie-cutter stuff. I used my own equipment as collateral for a small business loan and got things rolling. And here's where it gets interesting. The old business? Still technically alive. She still owned half of it. On paper, anyway. But the studio itself? Completely empty. The staff? Gone. The website? Dead silent. The clients? They all came with me because those relationships weren't with the company. They were with me. So yeah, she technically owned half of a ghost town. Within a week, I made it a point to call every client we had active projects with. I told them we were going through a little business shakeup, but reassured them I'd still be the one handling everything, just under a new name. Honestly, I braced myself for a few of them to pull out or at least try to renegotiate. But nope, not a single one left. In fact, most of them were more supportive than I ever imagined. I casually mentioned I was going through some personal complications. Next thing I knew, I was getting an earful of their own messy divorce stories. One client, Mrs. Callahan, total legend. She said, I always thought she was too slick for this work. Gardens aren't meant to be slick. For the past 5 months, I've been grinding sun up to starlight. Yeah, the new studio's smaller, but so are the bills. And for once, I'm actually calling the shots. Lucas and Maya came with me too. They even agreed to take a temporary pay cut in exchange for a piece of future profits. That kind of loyalty? You can't buy it. And without all the pricey gadgets she used to insist we needed. Our costs dropped. In a good way. We stripped it back to basics, hand-drawn designs, simple digital renderings. Along the way, Maya picked up some tech skills and figured out how to make it all work using budget-friendly software. Surprisingly, the clients were all about it. A lot of them even said the hand-drawn plans felt more heartfelt, like it actually meant something to them. One guy said it best when I apologized for not having the usual flashy visuals. He just smiled and told me it felt way more personal. Revenue dipped a little at first. No big shock there. But expenses dropped too. So in the end, it all evened out. And honestly, without the constant pressure to scale up or chase some growth metric. I started remembering why I got into this business to begin with. Building something real. Something solid. No gimmicks. No corporate buzzwords. Just dirt, roots, and honest work. Then her lawyer reached out. Apparently, Olivia's losing her mind over the fact that her so-called investment is now worth about as much as a weed patch. She's demanding I hand over business assets and is threatening to sue. Luckily, I'd already hired a new lawyer, a lot more level-headed. Guy specializes in small business law. He explained to them that I hadn't broken the settlement. The old business? Still exists. She owns half of what's left, basically an empty shell. There was nothing in the settlement that said I couldn't start fresh. Or that I had to keep working at the old company. Last I heard, her lawyer was sounding pretty rattled. Turns out she had been counting on a steady flow of cash from the business. She'd already gone ahead and moved into some high-end apartment and leased herself an overpriced German car. The problem? Those fat profit checks she was banking on? Yeah, they never actually showed up. Just a whole lot of radio silence. And honestly, the irony of it all? It was downright beautiful. Some of our old clients started reaching out to her, asking about new landscaping projects. Funny thing is, she had no choice but to send them my way. Not out of kindness, she simply didn't have another option. I'm not out here looking for revenge. All I want is to create amazing spaces and make an honest living. But I'm not gonna lie, it does feel pretty damn good. Knowing that the same business she once brushed off as just playing with plants is now thriving without her around. Meanwhile, her emergency fund is probably drying up faster than a desert riverbed. But of course, she couldn't just leave it alone. The other day, she showed up at my new studio totally unannounced. I was right in the middle of putting the final touches on a design. Luckily, I didn't smear the whole thing when she startled me. She looked different, still decked out in some designer outfit as usual. But that cocky little smirk she used to wear? Gone. Instead, she looked stressed out, almost desperate. She kicked things off with some small talk, complimenting the new space, trying to play it cool. But it didn't take her long to shift gears. We should really talk about the business, she said. I just kept working, letting her ramble. Believe it or not, she actually suggested we should team up again because we made such a great team. Said it was a mistake to let personal drama mess up the business side of things. I had to fight the urge to laugh right in her face. Because let's be real, this had nothing to do with her missing the work we did. Her fancy designer bag looked beat to hell. And all that flashy jewelry she used to love showing off? Nowhere to be seen. When I didn't jump at her offer, she flipped tactics and started nitpicking my business. Said my website looked amateurish. I mean, it was put together by Maya's kid who's studying digital media. Sure, it's simple, but it gets the job done. And my social media? Inconsistent, she said. Yeah, because unlike her, I actually spend my days knee-deep in soil instead of glued to a screen. Then she said my pricing wasn't sophisticated. It's pretty straightforward, really: time, materials, and what's fair for the people I work with. Not some inflated, profit-obsessed formula. Then she hit me with, "You need me." Claimed this business could pull in triple the revenue if I had the right digital presence. I just about lost it laughing. What she never understood, and probably never will, bless her glossy, fake minimalist heart, is that I didn't build this business to impress some tech panel or rake in LinkedIn likes. I wasn't planting gardens to win applause. Every project with my name on it meant something real. It wasn't just some engagement-chasing stunt. This studio? Sure, it's not sitting in some shiny glass tower with mood lighting and air-purified succulents. But it's got something none of those fancy places could ever fake. Real integrity. I didn't need her Pinterest vision boards or trendy buzzwords. I needed dirt under my fingernails, roots in the ground, and the kind of respect that doesn't come from a glossy press release. Funny enough, that's exactly what made this place truly mine. Finally, I put down my pencil, looked her right in the eyes, and said, "Listen, I'm actually making more money now than I did when we were married. Revenue's lower. Expenses are way lower. Profits way higher." Her face twisted up in the weirdest way. She blurted out, "That's impossible. Your studio's half the size." "Yeah, but so's the rent, barely a third of what we used to shell out. No pricey 3D rendering rigs collecting dust. No shiny new tech upgrades every 5 months just to show off. No overpriced espresso machine for clients who never even touched it. Just a simple studio where people can see real gardens being sketched by real hands." She was livid. I mean, practically vibrating with anger. Started calling me small-minded. Accused me of wasting my potential. Which is hilarious, coming from someone who thought every garden needed a QR code. And fake lighting just to look good on Instagram. And then, like perfect timing, Maya walks in holding lunch. She spots my ex, freezes for a second, then shoots me a look like, "You want me to stick around?" I just gave her the tiniest head shake. Maya just gave a small nod and slipped out without making a sound. Seriously, she moved like a ninja, carrying a salad. And Haley definitely noticed. Oh, she caught that for sure. Her eyes darted between me and the door Maya had just disappeared through. "They both work with you?" she asked, voice as flat as ever. "Yeah," I said. "Lucas and Maya. And honestly, most of the clients, too." She didn't respond right away. just stood there for a second, taking it all in. The drawings pinned up on the walls. The half-finished model of a community garden sitting on the work table. The whiteboard packed with client notes and updates. Basically, the whole place was screaming, "We're doing just fine without you." "You planned this?" she finally asked, like she couldn't believe it. I didn't even blink. "I adapted," I said. That's what real businesses do when they lose dead weight. That one hit her where it hurt. She turned on her heel and stormed out of there. But not before throwing out a dramatic, "This isn't over," over her shoulder. And sure enough, guess what showed up 5 days later? A letter from her lawyer, demanding financial records, client lists, the whole 9 yards. Her claim? Haley figured my new company was somehow profiting off the old one, and she wanted her fair share. Cute. My lawyer, absolute legend by the way, fired back with a beautifully crafted letter that basically boiled down to, "Yeah, that's a no from us, dog. New company, new name, new location, no ties, no access." Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was quietly having the best month I'd had since going solo. Projects were pouring in. Clients were sending friends our way. Even a local sculptor I'd teamed up with got us a little shout-out in this artsy community newsletter. And the best part? We weren't building for rich developers anymore. We were designing for real people. People who actually cared about space, peace, and connection. You know, the stuff that really matters. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call I wasn't expecting. It was a client from way back. I always called her the Rose Garden Lady. She used to think Haley was way too polished and disconnected from the dirt. Turns out, her son runs the city's botanical gardens, and they were in the middle of redesigning the Japanese section. Guess whose name got brought up? And this wasn't just a little feather for my cap. This was the kind of project I had been dreaming about. Real thought, real heart. Work that actually makes you feel something when you step into it. I kept it simple. Put together a proposal with hand-drawn sketches, thoughtful designs, and a few renderings Maya whipped up on some software that didn't cost an arm and a leg. We submitted it and waited. Meanwhile, 2 big-shot corporate firms submitted these glossy, overproduced digital playgrounds. That looked more like video game levels than actual gardens. We won. The director called me personally and said, "Your design looked like it came from someone who actually wanted to be in the garden." That line stuck with me. But, of course, my ex wasn't done causing trouble yet. Because of course she wasn't. About 3 months after everything split apart, I got served. Yep, she was trying to sue me again. She was claiming I intentionally sabotaged our old company just to screw her over. My lawyer just let out a long sigh and said, "This isn't strategy. It's desperation." Still, it meant more time wasted. More depositions. More paperwork. And more unwanted Haley Rama. During questioning, her lawyer tried to trip me up. Asked if I had started planning my exit once the divorce talk started. No, I said. I started planning my survival. Because when Haley made it clear the business was nothing more than an asset to split up, I knew I had to protect the work I'd poured my heart into. They even tried to rattle me by bringing Lucas in to testify. Big mistake. Lucas stayed cool as a cucumber and explained, point blank, that he left because Haley treated designers like machines and cared more about maximizing profits than creating anything meaningful. Then it was Maya's turn. In her calm, steady voice, she laid it all out. How Haley kept forcing cookie-cutter designs down our throats just to keep scaling up the business. Evan taught us that real design starts by listening to the land and to the people. Olivia? She just wanted cookie-cutter templates. And then came the unexpected witness, one of our longtime clients, the same one who had called me in the first place. This lady showed up to testify even though her arthritis and bad knees made it tough to get around. She had a photo album clutched in her hands and a fire in her voice that you couldn't miss. She pointed straight at Haley and said, "This woman told me to rip out my rose garden and cover it with artificial turf. Because it'd be easier at my age. Like I ever gardened just for efficiency." Olivia's lawyer called for a quick recess after that bombshell. When they finally came back, they offered a deal. Drop everything if I agreed to buy out Olivia's half of the old business for $80,000. Now, I could have stayed bitter. Could have played the victim. But instead, I looked around at what I had. A business built on real values. A team that believed in me. And the dignity of knowing I didn't fold when life got rough. She tried to take everything from me. My work, my pride, my name. But respect? You can't take that. You either earn it or you lose it. And me? I never needed her approval anyway. All I ever needed was a shovel and a little bit of quiet. So my counteroffer? $1,700. That was the fair market value for what she was really leaving behind, a company with no staff, no clients, and no soul. And guess what? She took it. Oh, and Mr. Real Estate Visionary, the one she was giggling with behind closed doors. The one she was sneaking off to late meetings with? Turns out, that big offer she was banking on never actually materialized. Word around town was that he kept her strung along for months, promising her some fancy director role. But when corporate didn't greenlight the new division, he ghosted faster than a contractor after cashing a deposit check. She burned her bridge with me, hitched her wagon to a paper tiger, and ended up out of work in a city where her name didn't mean much anymore. Because people around here? They knew who had built the real legacy. About a week later, I was at the bank when I bumped into her brother. We were never exactly tight, but he always seemed like a straight shooter. He congratulated me kind of awkwardly, but then said something that caught me off guard. She's been doing this forever, he said. Taking credit for other people's work since we were kids. Parents, teachers, group projects, you name it. Then he told me she was moving to Seattle. Took some director job, told everyone it was a big career move. But the real reason she was leaving? The reputation she left behind. I just nodded. Didn't even have to ask. He volunteered the rest. Turns out, the guy she threw everything away for lost interest as soon as his funding dried up. Same old story. She tried to ride someone else's wave and ended up sinking. Meanwhile, me? I'm getting asked to mentor students, to speak at garden expos. Funny how life works out. Before we parted ways, he added, I saw your design for the botanical gardens. It's amazing, man. I didn't expect that. And honestly, that hit just right. Now it's been about a year. We've got 7 employees, 2 locations, and a roster full of real clients chasing real missions. We've even been featured in a couple of design magazines and podcasts. Still have no idea how I ended up rambling on a podcast. But hey, I'll take it. And here I am, dating again. Found someone who, ironically, still hand-draws plants like it's second nature. Most mornings, I'm sipping coffee in my own backyard, watching a Japanese maple grow from a tiny cutting I planted myself. Haley once said I'd be bankrupt in a year. Instead, I ended up with something way more valuable. Peace, purpose, and a business that's actually mine. Turns out, real success doesn't always come wrapped up in some shiny package. Sometimes it shows up in calloused hands, loyal friends, and the fresh, honest smell of good earth. And honestly, that's more than enough for me. Thank you for watching and sticking with me through this tough story. If you made it to the end, I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.